Hi, this is Ridea Keeping It Real, and we are continuing to read through the Bible using the Good News Bible. We're in the book of Esther in the apocryphal version of the book of Esther. We're almost finished with it, and let's see, actually on chapter 5, where Esther is now the queen. And she's gone to the king to talk to the king about saving her people. She has to let him know that the Jews are her people. He doesn't know that, and that Mordecai is her uncle. So the way she does that is she, gets dressed up to go see the king, and she's now at the point of chapter 5. And I did read a little bit of this prior to. I might not reread that. But she's now at the point of chapter 5 of inviting the king and Haman to a banquet. And Haman is a guy that doesn't like Mordecai. He wants to kill Mordecai. He just doesn't like him at all. But the king likes Mordecai, who is Esther's uncle, because Mordecai saved the king. So Esther is devising a plan to save her people. And so she's inviting the king and Haman to a banquet. And the king is still trying to ask her, what's wrong? What's the problem? What do you need from me? And then Haman is over here plotting to kill Mordecai. And this is interesting to read this, Yeah, I'll go ahead and read it. So chapter 5, Esther invites the king and Haman to a banquet. What is it, Esther? The king asks. Tell me what you want, and you shall have it, even if it's half of my empire. Esther replied, today is a special day for me. If it pleases my lord, I would like you and Haman to be my guests tonight at a banquet. I'm preparing for you. The king then ordered Haman to come quickly so that they could be Esther's guests. So the king and Haman went to Esther's banquet. Over the wine, the king again asked her, tell me, what do you want, Queen Esther? Esther replied, if If my lord is kind enough to grant my request, I would like for you and Haman to be my guests tomorrow at another banquet that I will prepare for you. It will be just like this one. And Haman plots to kill Mordecai. When Haman left the king, he was happy and in a good mood until he saw Mordecai the Jew in the courtyard of the palace. That made him furious. He was jealous of Mordecai, basically. But he went on home. Then he invited his friends to his house and asked his wife Xerxes to join them. He boasted to them about how rich he was and about the honor that the king had paid to him. It's a little bit closer. Paid him when he promoted him to the high office and made him prime minister. Oh, I didn't know he was prime minister. Okay. What is more, Haman said, Queen Esther gave a banquet for no one but the king and me, and we are invited back tomorrow. That's for all you people who think that when you're invited to something or you go to some office party or whatever, that is a big deal. Yeah, okay. But none of this means a thing to me as long as I see that Jew Mordecai sitting in the courtyard of the palace. Then his wife and all the friends suggested, why don't you have a gallows put up 7 feet high tomorrow morning? You can ask the king to have Mordecai hanged on it. And then you can go with the king to the banquet and enjoy yourself. Haman thought it was a good idea, so he had the gallows built. The king honors Mordecai. That night, the Lord kept the king from sleeping. Hold on. The Lord kept the king from sleeping. So the king ordered his private secretary to bring the official records of the empire and read them to him. He read the account of how Mordecai had uncovered a plot to assassinate the king. The plot made by the 2 eunuchs who served in the palace guards. The king asked, how have we honored Mordecai and rewarded Mordecai for this? His servants answered, you've done nothing for him. Now, just as the king was inquiring about Mordecai's good deed, Haman answered, the courtyard. He had come to the king to have Mordecai hanged on the gallows that was now ready. "Who is that in the courtyard?" the king asked. The servants answered, "It's Haman. He's waiting to see you." "Show him in," said the king. So Haman came in, and the king said to him, "There's someone I wish very much to honor. What should I do for this man?" Haman thought of himself. Now, who could the king want to honor so much? Me, of course. So he answered the king, "Let the royal servants bring fine a linen robe for this man, one that you yourself wear, and let him bring a horse that you yourself ride. Then put the robe on that man you like so much, and then have the noblemen lead him mounted on the horse through the city square. Have the noblemen announce as they go, 'See how the king rewards a man whom he wishes to honor.'" Then the king said to Haman, "Fine! Do all of that for Mordecai the Jew, who holds high position in the palace. Don't leave out a thing." So Haman got the robe and the horse. He put the robe on Mordecai. Mordecai got on the horse, and Haman led him through the city square, announcing to the people as they went, "See how the king rewards a man whom he wishes to honor." Mordecai then went back to the courtyard while Haman hurried home. Carried his face in embarrassment. He told his wife and all his friends everything that had happened to him. Then they all said to him, "You are beginning to lose power to Mordecai. He is a Jew, and you cannot overcome him. He will certainly defeat you, for the living God is with him." And the living God is with us. Haman is put to death. While they were still talking, the palace eunuchs arrived to take Haman to Esther's banquet. Chapter 7. And so the king and Haman went to eat with Esther for the second time. Over the wine, the king asked her again, "Now, Queen Esther, what do you want? Tell me and you shall have it. I will even give you half of my empire." Here's where she tells him what's going on. Queen Esther answered, "If it please your majesty to grant my humble request, my wish is that I may live and that my people may live. My people and I have been sold into slavery. Our possessions have been plundered, and now we are to be destroyed. All of us, including our children, will be slaves. Including our children will be slaves. And so far, I've kept quiet. It isn't right that our enemy should be a member of the royal court." Then King Xerxes asked Esther, Who dares do such a thing?" Esther answered, "Our enemy is this evil man Haman." In terror, Haman faced the king and queen. The king got up from the table and went outside to the palace gardens. Haman could see that he was in a dangerous situation, so he stayed behind to beg Queen Esther for his life. He had just thrown himself down on Esther's couch and begged for mercy when the king came back into the room from the garden. Seeing this, the king cried out, "Are you going to rape my wife here in my own palace?" When Haman heard this, he turned away in despair. Then one of the eunuchs, whose name was Bugathon, said, Haman has even gone so far as to build a gallows at his house so that he can hang Mordecai, who warned your majesty of the plot, and it's 75 feet high. "Hang Haman on it," the king commanded. Wow. So Haman was hanged on the gallows that he had built for Mordecai. Then the king's anger cooled down. This has them at the table, king and queen and Haman. Chapter 8. The Jews are told to fight back. The same day, King Xerxes gave Queen Esther all the property of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. Esther told the king that Mordecai was related to her, and Mordecai was invited to enter the king's presence. The king took off his ring with his seal on it, which he had taken back from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. Esther put Mordecai in charge of Haman's property. Then Esther spoke to the king again. See, this can happen. This could all happen because it happened before, where your enemy has something set for you, but he ends up the one being hanged by what he had set for you. Then Esther spoke to the king again, throwing herself at his feet. She begged him to do something to stop the evil plot that Haman had made against the Jews. The king held out the gold scepter to her. So she stood up and said, "If it please your majesty, and if you care about me, please issue a proclamation to keep Haman's orders from being carried out. Those orders he gave for the destruction of all the Jews in the empire. How can we endure it if this disaster comes to my people? Or how can I endure it if this disaster comes from my people? How can I go on living if my whole nation is destroyed?" Then the king said to Esther, "I have hanged Haman for his plot against the Jews, and I have given you his property. If that is not enough, you may write to the Jews whatever you like, and you may write it in my name and stamp it with the royal seal, for the proclamation, including issued in the king's name and stamped with the royal seal, cannot be revoked. On the 23rd day of the first month of Nisan, the king's secretaries were called to letters were written to the Jews and to the governors and administrators of 127 provinces from India to Sudan. These letters were written to each province in its own language. They were written in the name of the king and stamped with a royal seal, and they were delivered by runners. These letters explained that the king would allow the Jews in every city of his empire to live by their own laws and organize for self-defense. They were permitted to treat their opponents and enemies any way they liked. The decree was to take effect on the Persian Empire on the 13th day of Adar, the 12th month. And this is E. This is what was not in the Old Testament version of the book of Esther. And we're going to keep going. And so basically the king's decree said exactly that. I should read it. I don't want to read it, but I need to read it. Hold on. The king's decree in favor of the Jews. This is the copy of the decree. Greetings from King Xerxes the Great to the governors of the 127 provinces which extend from India to Sudan, and to all who are loyal to us. Many men become increasingly arrogant when honors are given to them and favors are done for them. They do not know what to do with such good fortune. So they not only try to harm our subjects, but they even scheme against those who grant them favors. They are never grateful for what people do for them, and they even think that they can escape the judgment of God, who hates evil and sees everything. In their arrogance, they listen to the flattery of ignorant, sinful men. It often happens also that friends who have been entrusted with administrative responsibilities exert pressure on those in authority. They make their leaders their partners in killing people and bring about misfortune that could never be remedied. These friends, by their lies and deceitful ways, take advantage of the goodwill of their rulers. You can see examples of this misuse of power not only in the stories that have been handed down to us from the past, but in the more recent outrageous things which have happened among us. I intend to make sure that in the future my kingdom will remain untroubled and peaceful for all mankind. This can be done by changing certain policies and by judging fairly each situation that comes to my attention. Consider, for example, the case of Haman, son of Ridea, a Macedonian. He is a foreigner with no Persian blood and with no trace of my generosity. But I welcomed him, and he received the benefit of my concern and love for all mankind. He was, in fact, proclaimed father of the empire and received more honor than anyone else except the king. But his arrogance knew no limits, and he tried to murder me and take over the empire. In his crafty and deceitful way, he asked that Mordecai be put to death. Mordecai, who once saved my life and who has always supported me. He even asked for the death of Esther, our blameless queen, and in fact the death of all the Israelites. His purpose was to leave us helpless and to allow the Macedonians to take over the Persian Empire. Even though this wicked criminal plotted to wipe out the Jews, I found that they are not traitors, and all but are governed by the but are governed by very just laws. They worship the living God, the highest and greatest God, who has kept our empire in its excellent condition from the time of our ancestors until our own day. Therefore, I advise you not to carry out the instructions issued in the letter sent out to Haman. He is the person responsible for all of this, and he has been hanged along with his entire family. Wow. At the gates of Susa. God who governs all things has given him the speedy punishment that he deserves. I order you to post copies of this decree in every public place. Permit the Jews to live by their own customs and give them support when they defend themselves against those who attack them on the day set for the destruction, the 13th day of Adar, the 12th month of God, who governed all things, has turned that day of destruction into a day of celebration for his chosen people. Include this day amongst your national holidays and celebrate it as a festival. Now and in the future, it will remind us and all of our allies of the way God watches over our nation, and those who plot against us will be reminded of God's threat of destruction. Every province, every city, without exception, which does not obey these orders will feel my anger, and it will be destroyed in battle and burned to the ground. No human being will ever go there again, and even the birds and wild animals will avoid it forever. Post copies of this decree in plain view in every province so that all the Jews can be ready to fight their enemies when that day comes. Messengers on horses rode off at top speed to carry out the orders of the king and the decree, and also made public in Susa. Mordecai left the palace wearing the royal robes, a turban of fine purple linen, and a gold crown. When the people of Susa saw him, they cheered, and the Jews were happy and joyful. They held a joyful holiday with feasting and happiness in every city and province wherein the king's proclamation was posted. In fact, many Gentiles were circumcised and became Jews because they were now afraid of them. The Jews destroy their enemies. Chapter 9. On the 13th day of Adar, and see, I didn't want to read that, and it took me, 3 minutes, maybe 2 minutes to read that, and that was very important to read the actual proclamation. The Jews destroy their enemies. On the 13th day of Adar, the day on which the royal proclamation was to take effect, it was the enemies of the Jews who were wiped out. People everywhere were afraid of the Jews, and no one could stand against them. In fact, the provincial governors and administrators and the royal scribes showed respect for the Jews because they were all afraid of Mordecai. The royal decree had made his name known throughout the empire. In Susa, the capital city itself, the Jews killed 500 people and looted their property. Amongst them were the 10 sons of Haman's son of Hammadiah and Bugian, the enemy of the Jews. All of those names. That same day, the number of people killed in Susa were reported to the king. He then said to Esther, "In Susa alone, the Jews have killed 500 people. What must they have done in the provinces? Tell me what else you want, and you shall have it." Esther answered, "Let the Jews in Susa do again tomorrow what they were allowed to do today, and have the bodies of Haman's 10 sons hung up." The king agreed and permitted the Jews to put their bodies of Haman's 10 sons on public display. On the 14th day of Adar, the Jews of Susa got together again and killed 300 more people in the city, and they did more looting. The Jews in the province also organized and defended themselves. They rid themselves of the enemies by killing 15,000 people on the 13th day of Adar, and they did no looting. On the next day, the 14th, there was no more killing, and the Jews made it a joyful holiday of rest and feasting. The Jews of Susa, however, made the 15th a holiday, since they had slaughtered their enemies on the 13th and 14th and did not stop until the 15th. This is why Jews who live in small towns observe the 14th day of the month of Adar as a holiday, a time to give gifts of food to one another, while the Jews in the large cities celebrate the holiday in the same way on the 15th. That's interesting. The Festival of Purim. Mordecai had these events written down in a book and sent to all the Jews, near and far, throughout the Persian Empire, telling them to observe the 14th day and 15th days as holidays. These were days in which the Jews had rid themselves of their enemies. The Jews were to observe the whole month as a holiday, for this was a month that had been turned from grief and despair to a time of joy and happiness. They were told to observe these days with feasts and parties, giving gifts of food to friends and to the poor. So the Jews accepted all that Mordecai had written. Mordecai had recorded how Haman's sons had fought against the Israelites, how he had made a decree and cast lots to determine the day he would destroy them, and how he had gone to the king to request that Mordecai be hanged, but Haman suffered the same fate he had planned for the Israelite. He and his sons were hanged from the gallows. Because of Mordecai's letter, because of all they had suffered, and because of all that had happened to them, the Jews accepted Mordecai's suggestion and made it a rule for themselves and their descendants, and anyone that might become a Jew, that these days should be properly observed as a memorial. Generation after generation, in every city, province, and county, the Jews were to remember and observe these days of Purim for all time to come and never neglect them. The holidays are called Purim because Purim is the language Purim in their language is the word for lots. Then Queen Esther, the daughter of Amminadab, along with Mordecai the Jew, wrote down what they had done, putting the queen's full authority behind the letter about Purim. They both took responsibility for establishing the festival and made up their minds to observe it at all costs. Esther established a festival forever, and the written record was made of her official decree. The greatness of Xerxes and Mordecai. Chapter 10. King Xerxes imposed taxes on the people of the coastal regions of his empire, as well as on those of the interior. His power and virtue, as well as the wealth and splendor of his empire, were recorded in the official records of the kings of Persia and Media. Mordecai was the second in rank only to King Xerxes himself. He was a great man in the empire and was honored by his fellow Jews. He was greatly loved, for he sought the welfare of his people. This is F, not in the Old Testament version. Mordecai remembers his dream. Remember the dream from A? Then Mordecai said, God has caused all these things to happen. And I reminded of the dream I had about all of this. Every detail of the dream has come true. The small spring that had become a river, the dawn that turned into sunlight, and the abundance of water. The river is Esther, whom the king married and made his queen. The two dragons represent Haman and me. The nations are all those who had gathered together to destroy the Jews. My nation is Israel, which cried out to God for help and was saved. The Most High saved his people. He rescued us from all these evils and performed great miracles and wonders that has never happened amongst other nations. This is because God prepared one destiny for his people and another for all other nations. Wow. So this is because God prepared one destiny for his people and another for all other nations. It's powerful. Then came the day and the hour when these two destinies were to be decided, and the time had come for God to make a decision about the nations. God remembered his chosen people and gave the verdict in their favor. So each year, for all time to come, God's people will gather together in his presence on the 14th and 15th month of Adar and celebrate with joy and happiness. Postscript. During the 4th year of the reign of Ptolemy and Cleopatra, a man named Dositheus who claimed to be a Levitical priest, brought the presiding letter about the Purim festival. He was accompanied by his son, Ptolemy, and then declared that the letter was genuine and that it had been translated a member of the Jerusalem family. Interesting. I mean, that's powerful. I mean, and the parts they left out were the parts that we need today to remember. You know, that God has prepared a destiny for his own people and another for other nations. So let's see which one we're going to start coloring. I'll color them all, but which one am I going to start coloring? Oh, I love that one. Where Haman has to take Mordecai around. That's a nice picture. And we know that he said that this turban was like purple, right? Yeah, art we know. It's interesting. I mean, so if you have the Apocrypha, and you can have this is the Apocrypha too. You can get it on Amazon. I just read it from that because I like I can understand it, but you can get this on Amazon. It's pretty cheap. Um, and Esther is short in here, right? Look how short it is. I mean, let me see. It's different. Oh, it's oh, I see. So it's extra chapters. Interesting. And it just tells you where it was placed. Placed in the Greek before chapter 1. Uh, I might have to read this out of this book just to see what's the difference. This is all about Purim, basically. They don't repeat. It doesn't repeat the whole book of Esther in the Apocrypha. It just puts in here the things that were left out. I get you. But you can use this Apocrypha to, it basically, the hidden pieces that they didn't want you to know. And you know, you see why it's important to know it, right? Because it gives you the dream, it gives you the prayer. That's a pretty horse. This horse. All bejeweled. Judith was to me a little bit more powerful. Esther was, I think, because I read Esther before, so it wasn't as impactful to me as Judith was. Judith was like blew me away. The book of Judith. So we're almost at the 30-minute mark here, so I don't want to make this video too long. It takes a long time for these things to upload. So I'm going to finish coloring this. Go ahead and upload the video, and when we come back, we will start the Wisdom of Solomon. I can't wait to read this. The Wisdom of Solomon. So until next time, it's Ridea keeping it real.